But on football, talking about, what you've seen that I know spring practice hasn't been the most information that you can really.
Revealing.
Yes, most revealing at all. But what are some of the things that have stood out to you so far as spring football is coming to a close?
I don't know. I mean, it's just hard to make any determinations right now because there's a lot of question marks, there's a lot of open positions, but I haven't seen enough to tell you who I think is stealing positions or grabbing hold of positions based on what we've seen at spring practice. So I think Saturday is going to be really telling for that. But it's also difficult because, like, you think about last year, I feel like the past 2 spring games, there's been a lot of big plays and oohs and ahs from the offense, which is cool. You know, and it's your own offense, so you're fired up about that. But then you think about it, like I was thinking about it on the drive here this morning, like, that should have been a sign of what was to come maybe with the defense again. There's like images of the receivers playing duck, duck, goose in the end zone, Sage Ryan having a discussion with Brian Kelly after a big passing play happened. I feel like the spring game the past couple years has been more offensive oriented, like they've dominated the day. So I'm curious to see, and again, it's not like a traditional game setting this weekend like it has been, but in some of these situations, the red zone, whatever it is, the defense wins some reps. They have done that at points in the spring based on what I've seen in the full practices we've gotten to stay for, and the one-on-ones and the 7-on-7 and the team-on-team scrimmaging. But I want to see them do more of that on Saturday, and I think the thing that I reflected on most after practice yesterday was at the positions like running back and cornerback. What do you do there? With running back, it's different this year. Josh Williams is gone, and last year it was kind of a Josh Williams and Caden Durham split in terms of carries and touches. How does that work this year? Is it all Caden Durham?
Right.
Does Caleb Jackson get some touches? Is he ready for that? Does Harlan Berry factor in a little bit as well? Because that's it. I mean, you don't really have another option. John Emery's not coming back. He's going to play somewhere else if he's playing at all next year. Sorry, Lloyd.
We don't know that yet. He has uncommitted in the portal.
Maybe. I mean, what's
Week 2.
Shoot. He's a gamer. Like, he might join the team the week before the season opener and lead the team in rush for whatever reason. But I'm curious to see how they split the carries there. If Harlan Berry's ready to play physically. If Caleb Jackson has figured out whatever's been holding him back from having that breakout year we've all talked about, I feel like, for 2 years now. And then at corner, who takes the job? Like, I'm watching them go through their run support drills right in front of us with Corey Raymond yesterday, and there's Ashton Stamps and PJ Woodland and DJ Pickett. Who takes the 2 starting jobs there? You have 4 or 5 different people that could do it, but have people separated themselves, or is everybody kind of on the same level? Ideally, you have 2 guys that separate themselves and are elite amongst that group. So I think we'll find out a lot about that this weekend. And it's different situations, right? This isn't practice anymore. There's fans in the building. You're on the Tiger Stadium grass. It's a game scenario. Who buckles under pressure? Who's ready for that? You've had guys that have played big-time college football in those pressure-packed environments before. Obviously, Ashton and PJ have to an extent. But Mansour Delane and Jakeem Jackson from Florida.
Right.
Jackson or Johnson?
Yes, Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know why Jakeem Johnson, but from Florida. He's played in those big settings as well.
Get it together, Ryan.
Yeah, sorry. I'm one to talk. But yeah, those are kind of the 2 things I'm thinking about. Corner and safety and running back, kind of who stands out there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the positions we were talking about earlier in the show, and obviously DJ Chester met with the media yesterday. Center is a position, but really offensive line as a whole. You're losing 4 guys to the NFL draft. You bring in 2 transfers. Offensive line is a group that, from what I've seen from the practice videos, obviously, because I'm not able to get out there, it's right there in front of you guys, whether y'all are in the balcony or on the field. Offensive line is right there. Obviously you don't want to make too much of who's in the starting 5 in spring because that should probably change by the time you get to fall camp. What are some of the things you've seen from the offensive line group?
I like them. I think they have a good mentality. Again, we haven't seen a ton. I think what really impressed me, and I've said this before, is how they played in the bowl game, because that wasn't the group that's leaving. That was a lot of the guys that are going to be playing for the team this year, and they moved that defensive line. They protected well, and the offense was very prolific on that day. But a guy like Weston Davis has really stood out to me. He's big, Looks the part, as people like to say, but he's got this mean streak about him. You could just see it in his eyes and through his face mask when he's out there playing, man. He just wants to put a guy in the grass. So I like what I've seen from him. I think he's going to be a really good player for them at right tackle. And that's the mentality you've got to have. I don't know if the group last year lacked that. I don't think that's fair to say, because when you think of Will Campbell and Emory Jones and Garrett Dellinger and Miles Frazier, you think pure dog.
Right.
And this year's group has to have that as well. But I think it's going to be an excellent group, excellent pairing. It's just a matter of finding the best five. So is DJ Chester going to be the center? Does he kick over to right guard? Does Braylon Moore take that center job? I think those are questions that all remain to be seen. We're really going to find out about that in fall camp, I think. Like, this has kind of been the acclimation period for a lot of those transfers. I've seen people asking and wondering why the transfers haven't grabbed more attention, maybe, and already landed those starting jobs. They're not going to do that in the spring,
Right.
you know? But it's going to take some time for them to do that if they're going to do it at all. So I think that the offensive line is going to look different now than it will in August when we are out there for fall camp and getting ready for the season opener. I think how it's eventually going to end up is Weston Davis, Tyree Adams, Paul Mubanga. I think Braylon Moore will secure that center job. And then I think you'll see DJ Chester at right guard.
Yeah.
Or if you want to put him at left and put Mubanga at right, you could do that as well. But I think that's how it's going to end up. You got some good depth there, though, because there's a lot of guys in the twos that, you know, have college-ready ability, whether they're freshmen or they're guys that have played a little bit here and there. Bo Bordelon, Cohen Eccles, for example. So I like the offensive line. And Brian Kelly has spent a lot of time over there watching them with a notepad, jotting down notes.
Yeah.
And on the other side, Kyle Williams with the D-line, like, they're doing active one-on-one high-intensity drills, two-on-ones, whatever it is. So I think that he's getting the best out of that group. Brad Davis is trying to get the best out of his group. And now it's just about finding the best five, really.
Yeah. Lloyd?
One thing that we have not really talked about yet is, while we can't take too much from spring, one thing that can happen in spring is the portal window opens on the 16th. And so I would imagine that while we're having the conversation, we'll wait till fall camp, some of these guys are not going to wait until fall camp and might not be on the roster. Do you see that LSU going into the portal and adding, or do you see them maybe possibly losing some of these guys because you brought in a slew of transfer portal players, and now you see kind of the position battles trying to figure itself out before fall? But I do think there's a world in which you start seeing, and that's why there is no spring game, right? Like, you didn't want to give people the opportunity to look at your roster, and I just think it kind of snuck up on you where you have 5 days until that window opens, and LSU is either going to be a buyer, but when you buy, you also sell.
Right. Your tone of voice there threw me off for a second. It was so funny. It was like, one thing we're not thinking about is the
He gets serious on you.
Yeah, I guess he does. It's like the one guy when you're planning something just in the corner of the room. Guys, one thing we're not thinking about is here.
I don't know if anybody
I think
about this.
The whole spring game tampering thing is so dumb, personally.
That's
Here's
just an
here's my 2 cents on it. If you're getting in the portal after the spring, it's because you can't play where you are.
Right.
Or
Simple as that.
Or you feel like you've outplayed what your current status is, and it's a negotiating tactic. I mean, you saw it happen with, Sage Ryan did it. It was like in the portal, and this was last year. He got into the portal, and everybody's like, thought he was coming back for sure.
Yeah.
And then it became, back to LSU, and there's only really one parallel you can draw to that. It's like, I want more money. And he looked around. It's like, if you're going to play, I'm playing corner and safety. Sounds like I'm pretty needed around here. Why would I not leverage myself?
Well, yeah, for better or worse.
Right.
Needed out of necessity. No disrespect.
No, but he saw that
they
too.
They didn't have a better option last year.
Well, yeah, and if they all leading into the spring and into the fall, it was like Sage Ryan's going to stick at safety, and then Brian Kelly, the first practice, like, we're cross-training him. He's like, okay, I see my value here. I'd like to see that value met.
Yeah, I guess, if you're transferring after the spring, though, it's usually, I think they're all worried about younger guys, the guys they recruited to be the future, leaving because they're ready to play now.
Right.
Haven't seen a lot of that, I don't think, in football at least, because if you were ready to play then, like, your coaches would notice that, and
you'd be playing.
You wouldn't be in a position to want to be transferring. So I don't know. I just think this whole the people are so paranoid these days, and you got Nico over at Tennessee doing contract negotiation. Like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, you're the starting quarterback. Y'all just went to the playoff over there.
Right. He's using the portal as a tactic
weapon
to try to get his money out.
I don't know where he would go now and start. You know,
right? Well,
Alabama.
If you just look at his his
guess.
recruitment from the beginning to now, it's been a
shit show,
a circus.
Whole thing's just dumb.
Yeah.
In my
Well,
opinion.
yeah, but as dumb as it is, it's where we are. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's
the world we live in.
Look at LSU last year; they were desperate for a defensive tackle, and this is when you get This is hired gun season.
Yeah.
This is the mercenary season when like that spring window is guys that are, how much are you willing to pay for me to go over there? If you need a player, like if LSU is looking for a defensive lineman again this year, like you see, if they want to go get a like legitimate starter.
I just don't know if there's any to get, you know, and
Well,
that's the thing about the spring portal. It's kind of the scraps. It's the bottom of the barrel, you know? I mean, in some cases it might be...
It's the desperate part.
Exactly. Right. And I wouldn't say LSU's in that position. It'd be nice to go and get somebody. I just don't know that there's anybody out there that's worth paying to go get right now because, you know, it's not a video game where you're like, 87 overall D tackle.
Right.
But this is real life. You got to learn the defense. You got to, like, get acclimated to the school and the coaching staff and how things are done. And I think it's just too late by that point. Like, we're in April, you know, and now you're going to have the summer and the fall. But, you know, that's the reason why you don't see a lot of high school guys that don't enroll early play early is because you need to get acclimated to the surroundings and in everything. It's not a video game. It's not this guy's this and he just whatever. This is real life, obviously. So to answer your question about the portal, I'm sure they'll take some hits, you know. They have a lot of depth at a lot of different positions. I'm not really expecting anything big, though. Like, you might see some guys in the DN room potentially like to go somewhere else possibly because think about the names and the people they have in there.
Yeah.
You know, like a Dylan Carpenter, for example, out of Santa Monica, who's been there a couple years. I don't know if he's going to see the field a lot this year. Like, guys kind of like that maybe you're seeing the writing on the wall a little bit. But with that said, you know, he's not like a redshirt senior or anything. This isn't it for him this year. And you brought in a lot of guys that are kind of players for this year's team. There's still certainly snaps for him in the future. So I don't think they'll lose a lot. If they lose anybody, it won't be like super impactful guys. Like they've lost a couple receivers the last few years that, you know, have been pretty deep in the depth chart and probably wouldn't have seen the field a lot anyway. And as far as bringing guys in, I mean, you can. I just don't. It'd be depth pieces that you're adding, which might not be a bad thing because the portal adds they did leading into the spring were starter guys, you know, like Jack Pyburn and Patrick Payton and names like that are dogs. It wouldn't be a bad thing to go get a couple depth pieces if they're available from different schools, guys with good practice tape that maybe have seen the field a little bit to shore up some numbers at like D tackle, for example. You really can never have enough of them. Maybe a specialist. I don't know if there's a good specialist in the portal you have an eye for. Possibly you can add him. I'm not expecting a lot, though. I think that they spent millions of dollars to solidify the team they currently have, and I think they're going to rock with what they got, you know?
Yeah, it's just such a far cry from last year. Remember the conversations
Oh, my
about
gosh.
defensive tackle and, he wants $1 million. And
the
too
price.
rich for
Dominic
Bob Blood.
Williams or whatever.
Yeah, and the whole LSU, the whole fan base was like, good, don't pay him. And then you fast forward to what happened over the offseason, like, pay everybody. It's like, what y'all think was going to happen?
The price rises exponentially from the first window to the second window because of just
desperation.
The demand. Like, it's a lot cheaper to go get guys in that first window when there's so many people in the portal compared to the scraps and the few in the other window. People are more
goddamn
desperate for
tariffs.
position. Yeah.
Well, I think the thing with last year was that, you know, they wanted to pay players, but they weren't going to pay somebody a bunch of money that didn't deserve it. So they must not have thought that the players that they were going after in the portal were worth the crazy asking prices they wanted.
And now I think LSU is in the opposite camp.
Exactly.
They will pay you.
Yeah.
If you had this mentality last year, you have two defensive tackles that aren't Suggs and Paez. You got those. And for better or worse, like I don't even know what they did last year.
Yeah,
They
no
went
idea.
to Miami and Michigan.
There's a TCU to Miami. There's one that went to Auburn. I'm trying to figure out where the other ones went. There were a couple.
Well, there was Walter Nolan who went from A&M to
See,
Ole Miss.
like LSU now, if that happens, Like they would have been in the Walter Nolan
Yeah,
sweepstakes.
throwing
Probably,
bags.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I like all the additions they made. Like these guys have all produced previously and were worth the money to me.
Yeah.
So they just must not have. Maybe last year they were caught in between. Like some guys wanted way too much, and some other guys wanted a lot, but they weren't good enough. Like the guys that wanted a lot of money were good enough for that money, and then there were guys that saw the market value, kind of like the NFL. That weren't worth that money and they weren't willing to spend it. And last year they didn't have the NIL and whatever else backing that they seem to do now, which is something to keep in mind as well. But it's kind of like the NFL. You know, you see a receiver get this much money and then a guy that puts up decent numbers wants the same because that's kind of the new market. And I guess that's creeping down into college, just like that Nico situation we were just talking about a little bit.
Last one on the football side, you brought up specialists. And special teams is obviously something that's been talked about, and we were talking about it before you came in. Been talked about a lot over the last 3 seasons, really Brian Kelly's entire tenure, because I mean, the first game, you know, you look back to Florida State year 1, you have the muffed kickoffs and punts and blocked field goal and extra point. That's something that has moved in the right direction in some spots where you have guys like Xavion Thomas and Berrien Brown and Aaron Anderson and then and Aaron Burrell with the kickoffs. And you have Damian Ramos, who's been a sure thing inside a certain range. When he extends a little bit more, it's a little less sure. But then like the punting group and those things, what have you seen? And I don't know how much they've shown you at practice, but what have you seen at practice? What are your expectations kind of moving forward on those groups?
I expect Damian Ramos to be right in the Heisman Trophy conversation.
Yeah. I mean,
usage rate.
Before we even really get into how bad does it have to be for this to be a storyline really going into the season almost every year?
Year 4.
This being a problem.
I don't think it was terrible last year. Obviously, you had the A&M game and the Florida game where the operation failed.
Yes.
Kind of sounds like you're downloading something off
Sounds
the
like he
internet.
works for Boeing.
You know? Yeah. That's how it is, though. I mean, it's operation time, whatever it is. Their terminology.
Glutes weren't activated.
Yeah. It's been an issue, and I don't think it's ever going to be perfect, but I feel like there's a lot of programs out there that have had really good special teams, and people kind of, to a certain degree, take it for granted after a while.
Right.
You know, just how seamlessly the punting operation goes with no shanks and no bad snaps and no blocks. The field goal units, you know, converting at a high clip. And that's the ultimate equalizer in some cases, like turnovers and special teams. That is how you win, lose, change games as they're going. You know, if you're in a bad spot, a good spot, whatever it is. So I think last year, for the most part, the return games were great.
Right.
I thought the field goal kicking was average to slightly above average. It's the punting, though, to me, that needs to get better. I think the actual snapping part has been fine, but it's just been the distance and the hang time and
consistency,
the ability to flip the field position.
Yeah.
They need to find somebody there. They brought in Blake Oschendorf last year, who I think was okay, but I don't think met the expectation. And what's the kid's name? Grant Chadwick. Yeah, they got him in this year. Peyton Todd's still there. Haven't seen enough punts to. I mean, and even if we were there and we were watching the punts, you know, it's practice, it's whatever. Right. It's difficult to even kind of tell what's going on. But I think that's the area that they need the most improvement this year, is just the ability to grab a couple extra yards with better punts,
flip the
zero
field,
shanks, good coverage, all that. Because the kick return, the punt return, those are excellent. I expect Ramos to be, you know, him, which is pretty reliable. You know, make the PATs, obviously, and then whatever you can do from a field goal standpoint, great. So I think that's the area where they need to get better the most, is actually in the